Oh my god, I'm back. Oh my god, it's me, Nick. Oh my god. Okay, anyway. Hi everybody. I haven't done a... Oh, damn it. Sorry about that, guys. If you got a clipping right there, I just got a call from my girlfriend. I just wanted to answer it, and it got a little chilly, so I just put back on my flannel shirt. Anyway, so this is going to be a response to Divinity33372. No, just kidding. It's actually 33372. I don't know what the meaning of that is, if it's just random numbers or something. So, Divinity, sorry, I meant to make your response Wednesday, but in the circles that I travel on Facebook, things have just been so hectic. I don't even want to get into it, but it's just been a shitty week for me, so I can't put it... I have to put it bluntly, this week has really sucked. So I haven't really had the enthusiasm or the spirit, or whatever you want to call it, to get around to your video. But now I have it. Now I will make a shitstorm. So, not really. So this should be a fairly non-controversial video. I mostly just want to clarify misconceptions I feel like you have. I'm not really interested in proselytizing you. I don't care if you're an anarchist. I mean, I do. I would love it if you were an anarchist, because you seem to have, decent values here and there, and you seem to have your heart in the right place and good intentions and all that. So that's good. But I feel like you don't really know what anarchism is about, and I feel like you just, from what I'm looking at it, all you really say is, oh, hey, I've been looking into this one anarchist thinker, and I want to talk about how anarchism is impractical. I don't really think that's a practical way of going about studying a subject. I don't know if you just looked into Emma Goldman, read a few of her works, and decided, no, this is bullshit, or it's counter to human nature, as you say in your video. But I have to say that's not a good method of discovering what works and what doesn't. You just don't look at just one figure. Now, if that's not what you did, that's fine. I'm just guessing, just by what it looks like on your video. It looks like you only looked at Emma Goldman and then decided anarchism was bullshit. That's probably not true. I can't imagine somebody like you, because you seem like a smart woman. I gotta catch myself and not say girl, because you're not a girl, you're a woman. Anyway, you seem smart. So I can't imagine you would just look at one thinker and say, nah, that theory's bullshit, after reading a book or two about them and by them and whatever. So I'm hoping that's not what you did. And but all you say in this video is, all you mention is Emma Goldman. Well, that's all you mention. So, and you seem to have some ties to interest in sex workers and stuff like that, and so maybe you're interested in her anarcho-feminism, and it was more about feminism to you than anarchism originally, and so originally you weren't even getting into anarchism. But actually, never mind, you say that you were getting into anarchism, just to broaden your horizon. So, I was reading through the comments, and I found a few things, and I want to address them before we get started. So you said at one time, I mean, quote, the state, like in quotes, whoa. The way I've heard people who claim to be anarchist or anti-statist always talk about the state in kind of a vague, kind of boogeyman kind of ways. So sure, yeah, anarchists have many different definitions of the state, but a lot of them, not all of them, rely on the state and its role on having a monopoly on the use of force over a given geographic area. Now, what does this mean? Well, I'm not saying it's right or... let's see, I'm losing my place. I have a script here. It means... it means like starting your own defense company, which I'm just giving as an example. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Wouldn't be considered just in the state's eyes, because that's the state's job if the company was doing defense, because that's the state's job through entities like the police, the military, etc. They have the monopolized responsibility over using violence, defensive or otherwise, within the given geographic area. If there is a group of people who claim such a right, they are more or less a state. If a person on their private property claims they have and I'm not saying whether private property is right or wrong, I'm just saying, for an example, if a person on their private property claims they have a monopoly on the use of rightful violence within their own geographic area, they're nothing more than a microstate and should be opposed just as much as any other state. I hope that clears things up a little bit. I think a lot of anarchists tend to rely on the Weberian notion of the state, which I haven't looked at alternative theories of the state, so I can't say his is the best. I'm just saying that's the one I've read, that's the one I'm most familiar with, and that's the one that makes the most sense to me. I've never heard alternative theories of the state. or what it would mean. I think maybe I have, but I've never really found them credible or really memorable. Weber's ideas on the state is really good. It's on Politics as a Vocation. I actually haven't read the whole thing. It's just notable for defining the state. He's not an anarchist, by the way. I'm pretty sure you know that, but he's just a sociologist. Anyway, so here's another comment. You say, quote, there are multiple types of or somebody says to you, there are multiple types of anarchism. There is no way to really say anarchism and have everyone know exactly what exactly it is that the person is referring to. There is even socialist anarchism, often called libertarian socialism. There's collectivist anarchism versus individualist anarchism, anarchist communism, anarcho-syndicalism, national anarchism, etc. And some, if not most of these, are not necessarily synonymous with libertarianism. It seems you might just be talking about collectivist anarchism. Not sure. And then you said, "Oh Jesus, now I'm more confused than ever." Squinty eyes or something like that. Okay, so yeah, there's multiple schools of anarchism, and Goldman was mostly part of the collectivist school of thought, or anarcho-communist school of thought, or whatever you want to call it. All Fruity K was saying, and that's the commenter, I think, is that it's hard to claim that there's only one true school of anarchism. That's my interpretation. Maybe Fruity K wasn't trying to say that. When there's so many out there, etc., etc. I don't think it's actually within the scope of this video to explain all of the schools of thought to you, or why one is what, why one is such this, why one school is this and why one school is that, and they're major thinkers. So I'll just refer you to a great article on Wikipedia, actually, called Anarchist Schools of Thought, and I'll put it in the description. And if you want to talk more about that, I am happy to. I spelled happy wrong. Okay, I put the A before the H instead of the H before the A. Anyway, lastly, you said IDK. I watched a documentary suggested to me on a time when the Spain had anarchy, and they blamed prostitution and forced something different on sex workers. It was a woman who decided this. Apparently not all the women had equality, which leads us back to exactly where we are now. Sad face. Okay, so right, what's worth keeping in mind here is that anarchists are as much subject to cultural influences and bias like anyone else. Just because anarchist men didn't believe in rulers doesn't mean they didn't see the contradiction in their relation with women. So it's not only a failure of those anarchists, and it certainly is, by the way, but also a failure of the culture they grew up in, which probably taught them no better. So it's a shared guilt, in my opinion, and not necessarily just flatly on the anarchists. Now, to your video. So, you talk about reasons for talking about anarchism as furthering knowledge. Good, great. I'm glad you're doing that. That's a fantastic reason to do anything, really, further your knowledge. And I think you're being earnest about it, so that's why I'm doing a video response. If I didn't think you were being earnest about it, I wouldn't have made a video response. So you say, I don't think I'll ever be able to call myself an anarchist. Well, I wouldn't make such big predictions. For one thing, we all say things like this throughout our lives. Oh, I would never do this, or I would never do that. I'd never say this. I'd never react that way. But we always, we tend to end up going against them because life is just unpredictable like that, from either time to time or just flat out start ignoring that. Regardless, this video response is more about clearing up misconceptions I think you have in order to get you closer to understanding anarchism. I'm not necessarily trying to get you to accept it or see it as practical, uber practical, or whatever. That's a small part of this video, but I'll try not to overemphasize it if it is possible. To elaborate a little, I'm not interested in proselytizing you. You don't want to be an anarchist, that's cool. But I at least want you to understand the theory a little bit better than I think you do, or did in your previous video. And I just want to clear up misconceptions. If this doesn't make you an anarchist, that's cool. No big skin off my back. It'd be cool if it did. That'd be awesome. But you're just one person. Among billions and billions and billions. So, anarchism is a big project of education, really. And you're not going to get everybody to go along with your thing, and that's just how it goes. So, you say, isn't anarchism how we all started out? Well, even though I know why you're saying this, it's not exactly true. The hunter-gathering societies that people used to have might have had anarchic themes. Sorry, not quotations. I was emphasizing it, not quoting. It might have had anarchic themes or traits to them, but overall, of course, norms widely varied on what was accepted in the community. Sometimes women rule, sometimes men, but more often, of course, men ruled over women, and more often than not, chieftains would be de facto rulers of a sort. So for more info, I suggest reading Harold Barclay's People Without Government, and I'll link the Amazon link to his book in the description. Pretty good read. It definitely is very provocative. I liked the book, although he calls himself an anarcho-syndicalist. Not syndicalist, but someone who's cynical about anarchism but supports it. So yeah, he's an anthropologist, and he just talks about primitive societies and how anarchistic were they. You also might want to, now that I think about it, David Graeber's A Fragment of an Anarchist Anthropology. I'll put that in the link too. I'll just put under that Graeber. And yeah, so I hope that helps. So 1 second. Sorry about that clipping. I have like a loose key. Actually, it's a key that popped off, so I just keep putting it back on. Anyway, you say that anarchists rely on the better nature of humanity. Well, okay, so this is something I, again, can see why you'd say that. You know, I get that you think that in order to believe that humans could be self-ruling under present conditions, that we would have to believe that people are angels, or maybe you just think, just in general, even if we somehow had the new anarchist man, kind of like the new man under Marxism, but different, obviously, that, you know, it's not viable. But this is untrue. We don't assume the better nature of humanity. Because after all, if anarchists recognize that the current system as it exists are mostly the result of people who are not good, and people who help perpetuate them through popular media and the citizenry can be duped into doing bad things, then quite clearly we're necessarily, in some sense or another, we don't really believe this. Because we recognize that people can be stupid, can make mistakes, can be bad. I actually agree with you. You say that you don't think people are basically bad or basically good. I mean, I agree. I don't think there's some overt human nature to be good or bad. In fact, I actually think the word nature is really confusing. I don't really understand what it means. I've asked a few people to explain to me what the hell nature means, but I don't think anyone's ever given me a satisfactory answer. And maybe that's just because I'm just too skeptical for my own good. But I don't think we have a human nature. I don't believe in human nature. Well, maybe it's not that I don't believe in it. I'm just skeptical it exists. But, you know, I'm open to other suggestions. Anyway, so, yeah, so from my point of view as an anarchist, I agree. You know, people are not basically good or bad. They're a mix of both. Although, for myself, I tend to think the good can work out more often than the bad if we have the right institutional and structural incentives and we have the right sort of culture. But that's my own sort of personal take, not necessarily the anarchist take. I wish anarchists had a personal take. Now, wouldn't that be cool? Some anarchists are cynical. They think that the masses are stupid, unwashed, unhealthy looking, that they'll never be much of anything. Kind of like an H.L. Mencken kind of approach, or a sort of an elitist approach, or just a cynical approach in general. I don't really get them. I'm not that cynical. The masses certainly have their issues. I have my own issues. Individuals have their own issues, whatever. But I don't think that makes the project of anarchism hopeless, and even if the project of anarchism was hopeless, I would say that we have to keep moving towards anarchy and try to get as close as we can get. So, you say we are animals first and foremost. Yes, we're all rational animals, really, but okay, sure. I'll accept that premise with the caveat that we're rational animals first and foremost. Animals develop hierarchies. This is something else you said. Well, what's funny about all your examples is that all of these, you know, packs, herds, whatever else, are entirely cooperative endeavors based on mutual benefit and consent. And honestly, it's not much of a hierarchy, it's more of a leadership. Hierarchy, to me, is like a disparity between power in relationships, one that is usually made to the detriment of the other and is continued to the detriment of one of the parties. This is clearly a leadership thing, and I'm not against leaders. I'm against rulers, and I think rulers are actually different than leaders. And that's another thing I want to clarify, and I should have clarified at the beginning. My apologies, but I never wrote it down in my notes. What is anarchism? Anarchism is a lack of rulership. Now, what are rulers? Well, for me, if you support a society that does not have rulers, and you even say rulers are just people who impose their belief structures on other people without their consent, I would say if you desire a society that lacks such people, you're an anarchist. Now, what beliefs. Now, what actually constitutes an imposition, and what sort of impositions, to what extent you allow, and what kind of impositions are better or worse than others, or what type of impositions you oppose the most. These all make you a sort of anarchist. But the baseline of anarchy is that you are against people who impose their belief systems on other people without their consent. So, for example, recently there's been ballots on gay marriage. This is a clear example of people forcing their belief structures or belief systems on other people. They use the government to tell gay people that they can't get married, even though they clearly want to. Now, I'm not a fan of marriage. I don't even like the institution. I don't think it should exist. But that's besides the point. I'm not going to force that opinion on other people. They should be free to make contracts if they want. I think, anyway, that's another topic. But what I'm trying to say, basically, is that these people use the government in a rulership form way. I mean, basically, they're being rulers over other people just because they don't like their values. Now, when these values actually... when the values that they're imposing themselves on, or the people they're imposing on because of the values they don't like, if these values that they don't like are actually genuinely causing harm to other people, and you can see that and you can prove it, it doesn't have to be a mountain load of evidence, but as long as you can, convincingly prove it, I think you're in the right to impose your beliefs, because, certain beliefs are obviously better than others. I'm not calling for a blind pluralism or relativism. So anyway, so for more on mutuality in nature, see Peter Kropotkin's Mutual Aid, A Factor in Evolution, and I'll link that in the description, because that's online. You can find that online. I don't want to link you the Amazon thing if you don't have to buy it. And obviously, as an anarchist, I'd prefer you not buy things from Amazon, but I've had family members buy things from Amazon for me. It's wicked convenient, and I'm not a purist or anything, so I try not to be. So you say things will war when there is a scarcity of resources. Yes. Thank you. Yes, I did not know that. No, I'm just kidding. So, sure, people and animals war during times of scarcity. I'm not going to deny that's true. Obviously, it's true. But that doesn't mean we have to war, or that problems of scarcity can't be solved through other means besides war or besides government or whatever. Because whether you're human or not, war is a pretty damn costly thing to do, and it often takes huge amounts of subsidies in the form of government institutions that want it to happen, like corporations, for instance, or a power-hungry in the animal kingdom, or a power-hungry monkey wanting to take over the community. But that doesn't mean it has to happen this way, and that's why we trade things with other people, so we don't have to have our resources scarce. If I'm running out of potatoes and Farmer Joe on the other side of the street has a bunch of potatoes and I have an overabundance of carrots, for example, the trade for my carrots for his potatoes, assuming he wants the carrots, solves my problem of potatoes and solves his problem of carrots. Let's presume that he lacked carrots. So that's why sometimes at least we trade things, so we don't have a constant scarcity of resources. I'm not saying that trading things automatically solves scarcity. I'm just saying it helps the problem. Obviously, the Farmer Joe example doesn't, universally apply or whatever, So I'm not saying the marketplace solves everything. I'm just saying, or whatever, trading isn't even necessarily a market activity, perhaps, but I'm just saying trading, if done mutually, in a mutually beneficial way, with both people knowing what they're getting into and, consent and whatever else, it tends to be a positive thing that helps the scarcity go down. So I think that's one obvious way we can alleviate things without going to war. So I'm interested to see how you respond to that. Now, you say that, okay, fine, you can say that, the state creates scarcity, blah, 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 but you're not considering all the variables. Now, that's true, to some extent or another. But you're not considering that this is just one of the major variables that enforces artificial scarcity in modern society. Honestly, I'd suggest that without the state, we would have what Voltaire de Cleyre calls voluntary abundance. I think we'd have plenty of resources for everyone. I think we'd have plenty of land for everyone. I don't think it'd be utopia. I'm not saying everything will be squeaky clean, but I'm saying things will be a lot better than they would be now. Now, please note, I'm not a post-scarcity sort, and I don't think we can move past scarcity. But again, I do think anarchy is, as my favorite anarchist Voltaire de Cleyre said, it's voluntary abundance. So, you say a lot of bad things cause scarcity. Sure, true enough. It should be noted, though, that the institution of the state, it usually exacerbates these issues. But this is still a fair point. Obviously things besides government create scarcity. Now, you talk about illness. Now, a lot of anarchists have different viewpoints on how an anarchist society might look like. But I've got to tell you, there's only one major group that shares, because you start talking about, like, primitive tribes and stuff like that, and how they are anarchistic, or how they were anarchist societies. And that's the one group that shares a desire to live as monkeys do. That's probably a straw man of their position, but I'm making a hyperbole. That's the primitivist. Most anarchists aren't primitivists and are well aware that medicine needs to be more affordable and better distributed in whatever way, markets or non-markets or whatever. We have many ways of figuring that out. Community awareness and organizing, non-governmental firms, removing patent restrictions, and so on. So it's not like anarchists haven't thought of solutions to illness. In fact, there have been very non-costly ways to do these things before that were called mutual aid societies, and these existed in the 20th century. I'll link something else in the description. But they were really low cost. They were really low cost, like firms and places like that really helped out the poor, especially, and minorities and women and blah 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 blah. But it helped out the most disenfranchised and at a very low cost. And Roderick Long, a professor of Auburn University, who's also an anarchist, has written about mutual aid societies a little bit. So I'll just link you to that. It's a short essay, not very long at all. Maybe like, I don't know, not too long. Probably under 30 minutes of reading easily. Maybe even under 20. So at one point you say anarchist society. I don't even know if those two words go together. Why wouldn't they? Anarchists clearly aren't against organization, right? I mean, I'm organizing this YouTube channel. I'm organizing this video. I organize a script. I'm not against organization, clearly. And I'm clearly against the state. So, not that that's all there is to an anarchist, but it's a major component. So, wasn't Emma Goldman for organization? I mean, didn't Goldman constantly get involved in different organizations and start a lot of organizations herself? I mean, she wasn't against society. I mean, she spoke out in favor of the free society, right? I mean, anarchists aren't against rules or structures or groups or organizations. We're just against unjust rules, structures, groups, and organizations, which tend to fall under similar patterns of, of working. They tend to work out in similar ways because they're foundationally built on similar premises or premises. So, yeah, we're not against organization or rules or structure or whatever. I don't know why you'd think that. So, yeah. Again, anarchism just means being against rulers. It doesn't mean, etymologically speaking, it doesn't mean being against rules. Without rulers, do we not have rules? No. People make rules up all the time without being a ruler. Being a ruler is actually, it has to do with rules, but it's not the only, it's not the only position in society that you could be that has to do with rules, obviously. You can just be an individual and just make rules of your own house and ask people to follow them, and if they don't have to associate with you, and you don't have to associate with them. And I mean, that doesn't make you a ruler. You're letting people, you're being laissez-faire. So you talk about the sociopath. Now, if you've got to first understand that there's a difference between being an actual sociopath and having some sociopathic tendencies. Some people may have the latter, but very few people have the former. I haven't done a study and I haven't read any studies, but I'm just going to suggest my intuitive feeling here is that there's not many actual sociopaths in society. But what would we do? Taking your question on face value, I know you said you don't want your questions to be discounted, so I really am trying to answer your questions. But anyway. But what would we do? Well, self-defense obviously comes to mind. We're not all pacifists, though there is a school for that if you're interested. It's based on Tolstoy's writings and other writers. organizing communities so they're ready for sociopaths or people like them, or just ready for aggressive behavior in general, making sure children are properly engaged with the community so that they know that as well. Now, ages may vary, but I'd say around 10 years old. Buying security devices or hiring or going to self-defense lessons, that are taught in the community or whatever. And all this just reduces the likelihood of general crime. And it does it now, and it would do it then. I mean, there's no big difference, except, the forms that it would take and the different uses and how it would be distributed. So it would be different. It'd be radically different, actually. But my point is that the foundation or form, at least, wouldn't be too different. So I don't see any reason why the sociopath can't be dealt with. And it's true that I think anarchists should be against prisons as an institution. But we can still ostracize people. We can still we can do self-defense. We can arbitrate. We can. Those are the three that come to my mind. We can have restitution, but if they're sociopathic, they're probably not going to listen. So, that's the thing. Sociopaths actually kind of take care of themselves because they're not going to listen to rules or regulations. So you're going to kill them. Eventually. I would prefer them not being killed. I would actually prefer understanding, maybe put them in a place where they can get treatment for their mental illness and whatever. That's what I would prefer. But I understand that's not for everybody, so maybe if somebody got aggressive, or I'm not saying aggressive people are sociopathic, but that tends to be a part of sociopaths. Anyway, I'll move on. So you're... 1 second. So I actually have a good example of how you deal with sociopaths. So there's this event called the Porcupine Freedom Festival. It happens every June, late June, and it's happening next month, actually. And there's this guy, I'm not going to name his name, but he's kind of well known now for having done sexual assault and having fallen around ladies at this event and trying to seduce them or trying to keep bugging them and sexually pursue them when they're not interested. A few of them, I think, were even married, and he still didn't care. That's very sociopathic-like. So what have we done as a community to not allow him? Well, he was ostracized the first time it happened, that he started following people. The second time it happened, which was, I think, last year, people told him to get out, just plain get out. He wasn't felt welcome. He tried to argue with somebody, but did not go well. He was beaten up, but at least I don't know if he was beaten up. I don't think he was. And this year, he's decided he wants to go back because he's basically a sociopath. He doesn't understand what he's doing. Maybe he does, but let's presume he doesn't, and he's just mentally ill or something. Which not all sociopaths are, maybe, but anyway. So what is the community doing? Well, basically we're saying if we see the guy, he's he's like an open target, basically. He's not gonna. We're already gonna tell the people that we're staying with at Rogers Campground to not treat his reservations with any amount of validity. So do not let him stay here to begin with. That just nips it right in the butt or the bud or whatever. And if they do not honor him, we will give Rogers Campground probably a little bit of hell here and there because they're not listening to the customers. And if you don't listen to... Well, PorcFest is a pretty big event, so we'll probably easily have over 1,000 people. If they don't listen to over 1,000 people and lose all that customer service, they're going to be hurting monetarily for the summer. I can promise you that. So they have a big incentive to listen to us. But if they somehow didn't listen to those two things, the community would then take it into its own hand. I personally said I would talk to the guy and tell him to get the hell out. And that if he didn't get the hell out, I can't promise him his safety. Because he is a known threat. He is known to sexually assault women. And he's up on charges right now, I think, for sexual assault or rape or something. He's a dangerous guy. And he proclaims to be in favor of liberty and all this other stuff. But... big phony, obviously. I just want to just make that clear that PorcFest is a good example of an anarchist society. Most of the people there are anarchists, or even if they're just minarchists or whatever, they cooperate with everybody, and everybody is basically getting along without a government, Police almost never come by. This is like way up in New Hampshire and Lancaster, New Hampshire. So police hardly ever come by. There's no government, regulations or whatever. So it's a good example of freed markets and self-organizing and self-regulating societies, or a self-regulating and organic anarchist society, whatever you want to call it. So you say, well, look at the most well-known dictators and stuff. They're sociopaths. They rose to the line of power and stuff, and they're basically sociopathic. Yeah, sure, you're true, but it's not just them. I mean, leaders actually in general have sociopathic tendencies. That's kind of why they're leaders. I'll link some articles in the description about power and sociopaths because I've gone on enough about it. But so the next thing is that's how he started. You said again, that's how he started, anarchist kind of society. See how it worked out. It didn't last. Again, the tribes back then were not really anarchist. They had some traits, but overall, I would not say they were anarchist. And again, you say you have tribes which are anarchist and blah blah blah. And like again, no, they're not. Not necessarily. They may have some, they might have some things in common with anarchism, but they simply just replace the ruler. They just replace a ruler with a ruler-like person, which is a chieftain, and teach people to be below him instead of having consensus decision-making and stuff like that. Anyway, here's the big thing. So you say, after a big pause, it's counter to human nature, and Spain's example simply doesn't last. Okay, so just like a case of a state failing isn't a case of for anarchy necessarily, so is a case of anarchism failing not necessarily a good case for a state. You must keep in mind that it didn't last, and I'm talking about Spain here, because the anarchists were fighting off two factions of enemies, the Republicans and the fascists, if memory serves, and thus were constantly at war. The Catholic Church was also pretty invested in having the fascists win because the anarchists weren't too fond of the Catholics, because the Catholic Church was about as sucky back then as it is but now, I guess. But anyway, so it's not really the inner workings of the society at play here, although that's part of it for sure. But it's, the outside factors, and the fact that they had to fight off two different armies while also reconstructing a society. So it's amazing they lasted as long as they did, honestly, under the circumstances. I think any society would have trouble then, even a statist one. So you say it's counter to human nature, and that seems to be a big thing for you. Again, look, I'm skeptical of the term human nature. Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, I can't believe I'm mispronouncing his name. He introduced me to, with his essay Existentialism is a Humanism, introduced me to a skepticism about human nature. And I mean, that's really where I'm coming from here. I think we create our own meaning and we create our own selves and all this stuff. And there's no big objective to life, no one true objective to life. We all create our own meanings and so on and so forth. So I don't believe there's such a thing as human nature because we all come from different environments, different DNA, different cultures and upbringing, and as well as different biology to ourselves. So it's just simply not. I don't think human nature has as much validity as people might want to say. There might be more universal-ish meta-ethics that people share, such as like, I do what's best for me first before anyone else and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean it's part of some overarching human nature. I just don't think that follows. So even if you are right about it being counter to something called human nature, I don't think you can satisfactorily even explain what human nature is. So yeah, that's kind of my response to it. I know it's kind of a cop-out, and I'm trying not to give you cop-out responses because I really want to engage with your problems, and I want to resolve them as best I can. But unfortunately, I just don't think human nature is a great way to prove your point, at least for me personally. This is my personal opinion about the word. Some anarchists love the word nature, and they love human nature, and it bugs the hell out of me. I just don't see the appeal. So, but maybe I haven't read enough. I mean, I'm kind of notorious sometimes for being a slacker in terms of reading, so it's not like I've done exhaustive research on this. This is just my intuitive feelings mixed with my existentialism, mixed with what I've read from Sartre and other people. So you say anarchism never seems to last. That's a big problem for you. Sure, and 150 years ago, the supporters of monarchy would have told us the same thing about democracy, right? I mean, they would have said, look at that country. They tried democracy, and how long did it last? Oh, a few months tops. But look what happened. Times change, and so do people. And I think just on that basis alone, we can move forward to better systems, or we're going to stagnate. Personally, I choose progress, and I'm not saying anarchism is the only way. Personally, I'm of the belief that anarchism is the means, not the ends. I want to keep going after we get to an anarchist society. I don't want to stop there. Always want to be moving forward. That progress is really important to me. So yeah, sure, anarchism never seems to last. I mean, there have been societies that have anarchic features that have lasted a bit, and you might have heard about them, like Celtic Ireland back in the 500 ADs to like 1000 AD or whatever. Or whatever it was. I don't know if it was BC or AD. I think it was AD. Anyway, that lasted for quite a while, but then again, you did it feudalism, basically. And just the legal system was kind of cool, and there really was no legislator, and there was no monopoly on it, and it was kind of a cool chieftain kind of way of organizing. But it's not really anarchist, and neither is the so-called Wild Wild West, which is another thing anarcho-capitalists like to bring up, which I'm not even going to discuss anarcho-capitalism, but so sure, anarchism historically doesn't seem to last, but that's not really a good enough reason in of itself to discount anarchism, right? I mean, again, there have been plenty other types of systems and organizations and interactions, and people have said, well, you look through history and you'll see, wow, this never lasted. I mean, this lasted for a day or a month or a year, And even when they do last, even when anarchist societies, so-called, do last, people will always find ways to say, well, that's not really anarchism, or, well, it only lasted because it had some state elements, or, I don't know. People will always find something that's wrong, like I am right now, so I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying it's, again, you're kind of right, anarchism has never really lasted. But I don't really think we've had anarchism to begin with. And I know that's the typical, well, the USSR wasn't really socialist, so socialism hasn't failed, man, because I define socialism as X, Y, and Z instead of A, B, and C. But I do think that's a valid objection, even if it's made sometimes to stupid results or made for silly reasons or whatever. Anyway, I'll move on from this. So you say, I don't think it's in our nature, you use that word again, to just let things be. I don't know what you mean by this. This is a pretty big claim, and I'm not talking about the nature part. I mean, in general, letting things be, that's a pretty big claim, and I'm not sure you really backed it up with examples well enough for me to give a counter-example or suggest something is wrong with your premises or whatever, or or this conclusion. Now, further, I'm not even sure what you mean when you say just let things be. Like, what things? Why? How do we let them be? Etc. How could we not let them be? Like, I don't know what you really mean or what you're talking about. So you're going to have to be more specific. So we're getting towards the end. You say, but I'm not really sure how you want this to... sorry. So you say, but I believe in universal health care. And in school and have them equally and stuff. Well, I'll refer you to an article by Kevin Carson, and it talks about how bad the current monopoly on healthcare actually is. Not that we have universal healthcare, but just how messed up the healthcare system is from another perspective, and maybe that will bring you closer to the anarchist perspective. But again, I'm not really interested in proselytizing you, so what follows is not really a great response, but I'm just going to tell you about the anarchist point of view on some of this very briefly. So I'm not really sure how you want universal health care to happen or what it really means to you. You don't really tell me, and I know that's not the point of the video, and I know you only have 15 minutes to talk about your thoughts on anarchism. Me, I have this Microsoft Live Cam that has a program that I could just upload to YouTube from what I'm doing. So I have unlimited amount of time, basically. I mean, I did a 2-hour video before, so yeah, I'm not really. So I feel you. You know. By the way, if you want to have longer videos, and you have plenty of videos to do that, you have like 300 plus videos. Just use a different video programming, like, you know, use a Window Live Movie Maker or something, or a Window Movie Maker, and just, you know, do what you did before, but upload it from there, and you should be able to do things that are longer than 15 minutes. Because I feel bad. This is going to be way longer than your video already. I'm pretty sure it's going to be like 30 minutes or longer. It doesn't tell me on my program how long I've been recording, so I don't know for sure. But at any rate, to get back to universal healthcare, I don't know how you want it to happen or what it really means, and again, I understand why. But to say what Jacob Spinney said in the comments, sure, communities can try to do stuff like that if they want in an anarchist society, but, you know, that's just like... But just like your reproductive organs should be left alone from the state, so should anyone's wallet who doesn't want to provide such care for others. I don't see and feel, and feel free to, you know, try to prove me wrong if you're wrong, if you think I'm wrong, any moral obligation to provide for other people. You know, I just don't feel like I owe the homeless person on the street my money just because they're homeless. Yeah, obviously it's bad that they're homeless, and I want them to be in a better place, but it depends on a lot of things. Am I in a good way to provide for other people? Can I even provide for myself? Can I even meaningfully help them? Will giving them money even actually help them? So there's a lot more to this than just they're homeless, therefore I owe them money. You know, I'm not saying that's your argument or anything like it, but I'm just saying I have a problem with people who do say that I have some obligation to provide healthcare for everyone. And I mean, universal healthcare, I don't. And maybe this is just an appeal to a lack of imagination or something. Or appeal to incredulity, basically. Like, I can't imagine it happen, therefore it can't. But I'm not really saying it can't happen, even though I can't imagine how it could happen. I'm just saying it doesn't seem to work. Well, I guess it's the same thing, huh? Oh, well, I guess I'm making an appeal to incredulity then. I just don't know how else to really phrase this to you. Because I'm not going to pay for other people's healthcare if I don't want to. And I think it's immoral for people to force me to. It might result in more happiness. It might result in better collective benefit. But I'm like, you know, if I'm struggling to survive and you ask me, hey, I need you to donate like 20% of your incomes, like, that's going to my house and my rent and my utilities and or whatever, or my mortgage or whatever. We're not talking about an anarchist society, by the way. I'm just talking about the here and now. But if I was wealthy, I still don't think it's right to take people's money without their permission, without their consent. Like, I just stand behind this principle. Like, maybe it's inflexible, maybe it'll provide like disastrous results, but I don't think so. I don't think we need to force people to spend money just to get the poor to be better off. And I definitely do care about the poor, but I don't care about them enough, or like, I care about them so much that I don't want the money that they get to actually come from places that they shouldn't be coming from. Anyway, I think instead that it's a good thing to try to be, you know, prompted by the community or whatever, but not through the state, through networks of mutual aid and solidarity across communities to help out the poor. Now, that may be insufficient for you, but then, you know, you have this explicit advocacy of things that probably only really exist, and I'm not even sure exactly how universal healthcare could exist with a state. So, yeah. So you say some sort of state needs to provide this. Okay. Well, I think, and this is on education, I think the modern school from Francisco Ferrer was a great strategy, as is homeschooling, unschooling, community schooling that remains voluntary. So those are some good alternatives for anarchists to embrace, and I don't think it really answers your questions about everyone having equal access. I don't know how you would get that, or how you would do it. It doesn't really sound tenable to me. I mean, explain it to me, you know? But like I said, I'm focused on fixing misconceptions about anarchism rather than, you know, trying to convince you that it's right or uber practical, like I said. So I'm just telling you these are some of the alternatives that I'm talking about. I don't think I'll link them in the description, but I just don't see the need to. And lastly, you say authority should always be challenged. Well, my response to that is, yeah, says who?